Okay, so ready for a deep dive into something pretty fascinating?
Always.
We're going to unpack this bold idea about tackling a big environmental challenge. We're talking San Ysidro, California.
Okay.
They've been dealing with sewage contamination, like flowing in from Tijuana, for decades.
And this is really interesting how this proposal flips the script on those typical solutions,
Oh,
especially where they haven't worked out so well.
totally. And we're not talking about some abstract problem here. This is closed beaches, worries about water, a real impact.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And the stuff we're looking at really digs into that human cost that's been going on forever.
Right.
And so today we're really trying to figure out if this radical shift, how San Ysidro governs itself, if using tech in a new way could be the answer.
So the big question is, could San Ysidro, instead of always relying on San Diego, become its own city with its own Department of Technology?
Right, a whole DOT.
A DOT,
Okay.
to tackle this thing head on.
And we're not talking about swapping out like city planners for Silicon Valley engineers here.
Yeah.
It's about, can we use technology to just change everything about how the city approaches this?
Okay, so let's break down this whole DOT thing. I gotta admit, at first I was like, wait, tech for sewage? Am I picturing like robots on the beach cleaning up? It sounds cool, but
Not super practical.
So what's the real thinking here?
It's about seeing where the current way just isn't working.
Okay.
San Diego's huge, right?
Huge.
So that means bureaucratic delays.
Sure.
They've got competing priorities for resources, no real local focus. San Ysidro's needs just get lost.
It's like trying to get a small town's problem solved by like a giant corporation.
Yeah. Things move slow, no urgency.
Right.
A dedicated Department of Technology, though.
Mm-hmm.
Agile, responsive, directly accountable to San Ysidro.
This real-time monitoring they're talking about, that sounds really cool.
Yeah.
What's the most game-changing part of that for people living there?
Imagine sensors everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Along the waterways, constantly checking water quality. If contamination spikes, boom, instant alert. Think like a live map showing you contamination levels.
Okay.
So you can act immediately instead of waiting for lab results, which could take who knows how long.
Yeah.
That means residents, they could get an alert on their phone the second a spill happened.
That's incredible.
Helps them avoid any risks.
Now that you mention it, I do remember something in what we were reading about how this tech could be used for getting the public involved too.
Absolutely. It's not just behind the scenes tech stuff. It's about giving the community info a voice. This proposal even talks about like an online portal. Residents can see those real-time water quality reports, track projects, even report problems straight to the DOT.
So it's really using tech to make the whole system smarter. What other tech solutions are we talking about?
This is where it gets really cool. First, beyond the real-time monitoring, they want smart infrastructure.
Oh, well.
We're talking treatment systems that can adapt immediately based on what those sensors are saying. So no more waiting for someone to come out and fix it manually.
Right, right.
The system adjusts on its own.
So that's two big ones, real-time monitoring, smart infrastructure. What else? They mentioned drones, which seem a little Jetsons, but...
Right. And we're not talking about fancy aerial photography here. We're talking drones and GIS, geographic information systems, to map the entire sewage flow.
I mean, I know drones can take cool pictures, but how's that going to help with sewage?
Imagine being able to track where the contamination's moving from Tijuana.
Okay.
Pinpoint leaks, create maps to share with Mexican authorities, get them the info they need.
So it's about working together, too.
Exactly. Having that shared data could be huge,
Mm.
for tackling the problem at its root.
Right. And they even want to use AI for, like, predicting things.
Yeah, predictive modeling. It's
Like,
like,
sounds really futuristic.
it is kind of.
Yeah.
Using AI to analyze huge amounts of data weather patterns where the infrastructure's weak past sewage data,
Mm.
and actually predicting where and when those risks are highest before they become disasters.
So less like a crystal ball, more like actionable insights. This is starting to sound amazing, but can San Ysidro even become its own city? Isn't that a whole other bureaucratic nightmare?
It's a process, for sure, but the source material actually breaks down a roadmap for how to do it.
Okay, so a DOT, this Department of Technology, could be a game changer for how San Ysidro handles this sewage problem. But how does a place even become a city? It's not like they just put up a sign, right?
You're right. It's definitely not that easy. It's a whole process. And the source material actually lays out like a roadmap of how to do it.
Okay.
First things first, it starts with the people who live there.
Makes sense.
They've got to form like a dedicated incorporation committee.
So like a super-powered neighborhood watch, but for becoming a city.
Exactly.
Okay.
And they're the ones who get organized, raise money, rally support, and really show everyone that San Ysidro can govern itself.
Yeah, you don't want to become a city and then realize, like, whoops, we don't know how to run this thing.
Exactly.
So, okay, the committee's done their thing. What's next?
Then it's time for the serious stuff, feasibility studies.
Uh,
This is where they look at the money. Can San Ysidro actually afford to be a city? Providing all the services, police, fire, infrastructure, and obviously this whole tech plan, that takes money. These studies, they have to prove that this city idea is actually doable.
So if those studies look good, what's the next hurdle?
Big one, submitting an application to LAFCO, the Local Agency Formation Commission.
Ooh, LAFCO sounds intimidating.
They're the ones who decide if a new city gets the green light or not.
Okay, so it's like a job interview, but instead of a resume, it's like an entire city plan.
Basically, they have
Yeah.
to show where the city limits would be, their whole financial plan, and made a really strong argument for how being a city will help them fix these crucial issues, like this sewage problem.
So they really got to sell it.
Right, show LAFCO that this is the best move for San Ysidro. And then comes the really nerve-wracking part, convincing the decision makers. After the application's in, LAFCO holds these public hearings. This is where everyone gets to weigh in, not just San Ysidro residents, but people from surrounding areas too. Share their thoughts, concerns, hopes, the whole 9 yards. It's about being open and getting everyone on board, or at least hearing everyone out.
So it's like a massive town hall, everybody talking about this cityhood thing.
Exactly.
Like-
LAFCO takes it all in, all that feedback, they talk it over, and then boom, decision. Thumbs up or thumbs down on San Ysidro becoming a city.
So even if LAFCO gives them the thumbs up, it's not over yet.
Nope, not quite.
Okay.
The final decision, it goes back to the residents of San Ysidro. They get to vote on whether they actually want to make this cityhood dream a reality.
So it really is about giving the community the power to decide its own future, which is pretty cool.
It is, and that's what's so interesting about this whole DOT concept. It's about more than just technology, it's about giving communities the tools, the power to solve their own problems. And sometimes those tools, they involve some pretty cool tech instead of just the usual bureaucratic stuff.
Absolutely. And that's what makes this so fascinating. It's making us rethink what's possible when you give communities that control, that ability to use technology in these new ways. So whether or not San Ysidro actually creates this DOT, just the fact that they're looking at these options is huge.
Totally. It really challenges us to think beyond just how do we fix this one sewage issue?
Right.
It's a much bigger question. What if hyper-local governance, powered by technology and data, is the future of solving these big, complicated challenges?
It's a really compelling thought.
Yeah.
Instead of these top-down solutions, communities like San Ysidro could kind of forge their own path using what they know locally in these advanced technologies. But let's be real, not everyone's going to be thrilled about this, right? There are always two sides to every story.
Absolutely. That's a great point. Change is never easy, especially when it's about something as fundamental as how a community governs itself. There are definitely going to be people who like things the way they are, or maybe they're worried about the cost of doing this alone.
It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of new tech and stuff, but you're right, change is never easy. What kind of pushback do you think this whole DOT thing might run into?
Well, first there's the money issue. Becoming a city, not cheap at all. Setting up all the new systems, providing those essential services, and obviously implementing those fancy tech solutions, that takes cash. Some folks might be worried about their taxes going up or if the city could even afford all of this.
Right, makes sense. And it's not just about the money, it's about people too, right? Change can be scary, even if it's supposed to be a good thing.
Exactly. There might be people who are totally fine with things as they are, or they just don't buy that a Department of Technology can actually solve a problem this big, this messy. Building trust is going to be huge and addressing those concerns head on.
So even with the best tech, you got to do it right, thinking about what the community actually needs. It's not just about the gadgets.
100%. And that's what makes this whole thing so interesting. It's not just tech to the rescue. It's like a big social experiment.
Yeah.
We don't know how it's going to turn out, Could have a big impact.
So for someone listening, maybe they're nowhere near San Ysidro. What's the takeaway for them? Why should they care about what's going on down there?
Because this is bigger than just one town and one environmental problem. It's about completely rethinking what's possible when communities can take charge of their own future. And they're using tech to do it in creative ways we haven't even thought of. Whether San Ysidro succeeds or not, just the fact that they're trying this is huge. It's a
Yeah.
totally new way of thinking about how we solve problems in the 21st century.
It's like they're saying, we're not going to wait for someone else to fix this. We're going to figure it out ourselves.
Right. It's about challenging how things have always been done, pushing the limits of what we think is possible, and trying out new ways of governing that are more responsive, more flexible, and really focused on people's needs.
So while San Ysidro goes for it with this bold experiment, it'll be fascinating to see what they learn, what obstacles they overcome, and ultimately if this whole hyper-local, tech-driven approach actually works the way they hope.
And for the rest of us, it's a chance to ask ourselves, what seemingly impossible challenges could we be tackling? What have we thought differently? What if we really embraced what tech can do? Something to think about.
That's all the time we have for today's deep dive, but if this episode got you thinking and you'd like to explore this topic further, check out the show notes where we'll link to all the source material we used. And as always, thanks for listening.